So it is the spring of 1968, and we are far away from the screaming crowds, the flashing cameras of London.
Right. Totally different vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are actually in a quiet, really unassuming bungalow in Appleton Thorn, which is a village in Warrington, Cheshire.
Yeah.
George Harrison is visiting his parents, and he is fresh off this transcendental meditation retreat in India, and his mind is just, well, completely immersed in Eastern philosophy.
Specifically the ancient Chinese text, the I Ching or the Book of Changes.
Right.
And the really fascinating part of this exact moment is this profound philosophical divide that Harrison was actively wrestling with.
Yeah.
Because in the Western empirical paradigm, we tend to believe in coincidence, right?
Right, like random chance.
Exactly. If two things happen at the same time, we just label it random happenstance. It's a statistical anomaly. But the Eastern concept of relative causality argues the exact opposite of that.
It's absolutely nothing is accidental.
Yes, exactly. It posits that absolutely nothing is an accident. The I Ching basically operates on this belief that every little item, every event, every dropped pin has this inherent meaningful purpose that is tied directly to its exact moment in time and space.
Like you are fundamentally connected to the universe at the exact second you observe something.
Right.
So Harrison decides to run an actual experiment to test this. He wants to test this theory of relative causality. And he completely geeks out on the idea.
Oh, totally.
He decides to play a literal game of chance with the universe.
Yeah.
He vows to just walk over to his parents' bookshelf, pull down a totally random book, open it, and whatever the very first words his eyes land on happen to be, he will write a song based entirely on them.
Which is, it's just an incredible leap of faith for any songwriter.
It really is.
He is basically abandoning all plotted, premeditated thematic planning. He's surrendering the entire core of his composition to whatever the universe just hands him in that split second.
So he reaches out, he grabs a volume, flips it open, and his eyes lock onto two words. Just two words. Gently weeps.
Wow.
Historians actually believe he was looking at Coates Kinney's poem from 1849 called Rain on the Roof. It features a line about darkness that gently weeps in rainy tears.
But he doesn't even read the rest of it, right?
No, he doesn't even read the rest of the stanza. He just sees gently weeps, slams the book shut, grabs his acoustic guitar, and immediately anchors his new melody right around those two precise words.
Just completely bypassing standard songwriting conventions.
Totally. Welcome to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking.
That singular moment of inspiration in Cheshire is it's incredibly pure.
Yeah, it really is.
But Harrison was about to carry this really fragile, cosmically inspired idea back into an environment that was essentially crumbling.
The studio.
Right. He had just experienced this profound spiritual realignment in Rishikesh, only to return to London where his band was actively fracturing.
Imagine for a second that you are coming back from a perfectly zen, completely silent meditation retreat. You have achieved total inner peace.
Okay, I'm imagining it.
And then you immediately walk into a deeply toxic, passive-aggressive office environment.
Yeah.
Because that was the studio in 1968.
Yeah, it was brutal.
The band was dealing with the immense financial strain of launching Apple Corps. You had the constant, highly debated presence of Yoko Ono right there in the studio.
Right.
And to top it all off, John Lennon and Paul McCartney were genuinely resentful of Harrison. They felt his spiritual journey had totally sidetracked their career.
So he is completely spiritually isolated that room. And you can actually see that isolation bleeding directly into the earliest drafts of the song.
The lyrics changed a lot, right?
Drastically. They evolved so much from the initial acoustic demo, which is known as the Escher demo. That was recorded on May 28th. Between that demo and the final master, there's a huge shift. Initially, his lyrics were overtly political and, honestly, deeply bitter. They really reflected the chaos of 1968.
Yeah, looking at those early lyric sheets, they are incredibly harsh.
Yeah.
He wrote lines like, I look at the trouble and hate that is raging, and as I'm sitting here doing nothing but aging.
Very direct.
Very. He even threw in this theatrical Shakespearean metaphor, writing, I look from the wings at the play you are staging. Because, this was a year of global upheaval.
Assassinations, the riots in Paris, the escalation of the Vietnam War.
Exactly. And those early drafts confronted all that chaos head on.
But then he consciously shifted away from that overt anger. He discarded all the global theatrical metaphors and replaced them with this mundane domestic reality of human neglect.
The floor.
Yes. The opening line ultimately became, I look at the floor and I see it needs sweeping. He grounded this massive, abstract philosophical concept of unmanifested universal love into the physical reality of a dirty floor.
Well, wait, I am stuck on that lyric change. I have to push back a little here.
Sure.
If 1968 is literally tearing itself apart with global hate and violence, doesn't writing about a floor that needs sweeping feel like a massive step backward?
How do you mean?
It feels like he is making the song's message much, much smaller. Doesn't that dilute the impact?
On the surface, I get why it might seem that way, but I would argue it actually makes the message infinitely larger.
Really?
Yeah. By removing the explicit, heavy-handed references to the political turbulence of 1968, he made the song completely timeless.
Okay, I can see that.
It transitions from being this specific reactionary protest song into a universal existential lament. The dirty floor serves as a microcosm.
A microcosm for the world.
Exactly. His point is, if we cannot even attend to the basic care of our immediate surroundings, if we let our own floors gather dust, how can we possibly awaken the sleeping love required to heal the entire world?
Wow. Okay, that fundamentally reframes the whole song for me. He took this massive, chaotic world and literally shrank it down to a single room. so we could actually grasp it.
Exactly.
So he has this philosophically profound, beautifully crafted lyric. But now he has to actually get his bandmates to care about it, which turns out to be the most agonizing part of the entire process.
Yeah, getting them on board was rough because Harrison's delicate acoustic arrangement wasn't just, pulled from thin air.
Yeah.
Its musical roots trace back to his time in India, too.
Right.
While he was in Rishikesh, the Scottish singer-songwriter Donovan taught Harrison a specific acoustic guitar style called clawhammer fingerpicking.
And for anyone listening who hasn't tried to play it, clawhammer is this incredibly rhythmic style where your hand forms, well, a claw shape.
Right.
You strike the strings with the back of your fingernail on the downbeat, and your thumb catches the offbeat on the bass strings. It creates this driving, continuous drone effect that sounds almost like a galloping horse.
It's very hypnotic.
It really is. And he originally played it with a capo on the 5th fret of his acoustic to give it this brighter chiming sound.
Exactly. And Harrison combined that driving drone with a series of descending A minor chords.
Which always sounds so sad.
It does. Musically, a descending minor chord progression creates this inescapable feeling of falling, or this inevitable creeping sadness. So it perfectly matched the lyrical themes of neglect and weeping.
It's a perfect pairing.
Yeah, and he brought these exact elements into the studio for his early acoustic arrangements.
So they set up at Abbey Road on July 25th for take one. And it is literally just Harrison on his acoustic guitar and Paul McCartney playing a harmonium.
Just the two of them.
Yeah. And the sheer apathy radiating from Lennon and McCartney during this period is just staggering. I mean, the band was essentially functioning as 4 solo artists who were just using each other as really unenthusiastic backing bands.
Unenthusiastic is putting it mildly.
Right. Lennon and McCartney were totally focused on cranking out their own massive backlog of songs, so they treated Harrison's masterpiece with complete, utter indifference.
And that indifference was just one symptom of a profoundly toxic studio atmosphere. The tension peaked on August 22nd.
Oh, this is when Ringo leaves, right?
Yes. The environment got so incredibly hostile and suffocating that Ringo Starr actually walked out of the band. He quit and flew to Sardinia.
Just left the country.
Yeah. And when Ringo finally returned to the studio on September 3rd, Harrison went out of his way to decorate Ringo's drum kit with this massive display of red, white, and blue flowers.
Wow.
He was desperately trying to ease the hostility in the room.
It really paints this picture of Harrison as the overlooked middle child of the band. He's constantly trying to keep the peace while practically begging his older brothers to just pay attention to his art. But wait, let me ask you this. If the band was that disconnected, how did they manage to lay down a rhythm track at all?
Well,
did that thick apathy actually bleed into the sound of the tape?
Well, you have to remember, they were seasoned professionals. So they could certainly go through the motions and lay down a perfectly competent rhythm track.
Sure, muscle memory.
Exactly. But the apathy absolutely colored the sound. The early acoustic takes are beautiful in their own way, but they completely lack momentum.
You just drag.
Yeah, they sound like a songwriter grieving in total isolation. Harrison quickly realized that a delicate acoustic arrangement was not going to force Lennon and McCartney to pay attention. He needed to turn it into a massive, undeniable rock statement.
Right, because his delicate acoustic playing was just getting swallowed by the band's toxic apathy. He knew he couldn't change the internal band dynamics from the inside.
No, they were way too entrenched in their habits.
So he decided to shock the system from the outside.
Yes. On the afternoon of September 5th, right around 3 p.m., Harrison is driving from Surrey to London, and he happens to give his good friend Eric Clapton a lift.
Just a casual carpool.
Right. And on a whim, Harrison invites Clapton to come to Abbey Road to play lead guitar on the track.
And Clapton is terrified.
Completely.
He immediately balks at the idea. He tells George, nobody ever plays on the Beatles records. Like, that is sacred ground.
Yeah.
But Harrison just shuts it down with total conviction. He looks at Clapton and says, it's my song and I want you to play on it.
Which is such a boss move, and it introduces this fascinating shift in the psychology of the room. The second Eric Clapton walks through the doors of Abbey Road, the band's passive aggression just entirely vanishes.
Like magic.
Yes. Because a verified guitar god is sitting in the room with them.
Right, it's just basic human nature. You don't fight with your siblings when a highly respected guest comes over for dinner.
Exactly, you put on your best face. And to show off and pay respect, McCartney immediately jumps onto the studio's Hamburg Steinway piano and improvises that iconic, driving, galloping intro.
It totally changes the vibe.
Completely.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the entire band locks into this heavy, brilliant groove.
But I do wonder about Harrison's true motives here. Let me push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Was bringing Clapton in strictly a psychological trick to sort of parent trap his own bandmates into behaving? Or did he genuinely believe Clapton's specific lead guitar style was the only missing piece of the musical puzzle?
Honestly, it was a masterful stroke of both.
Really? Both?
Yeah. Harrison certainly understood the social dynamics. He knew Clapton's presence would act as a buffer to enforce professionalism. But stylistically, Harrison knew he needed a very specific voice that could literally weep over the track.
Because Harrison's own style was different.
Very different. His own guitar playing was deeply rooted in rockabilly and country picking. Clapton, on the other hand, was steeped in the blues.
Right.
Clapton's phrasing was highly lyrical. He knew how to stretch and bend strings, so they mimicked the natural inflections of a human voice crying.
I see.
Yeah. So Clapton's guitar can do the emotional heavy lifting that Harrison's own restrained, meditative vocal delivery was intentionally leaving unspoken.
So Clapton steps up and absolutely nails the performance. But when they listen back in the control room, they run into a totally new problem.
Right.
The solo sounds amazing, but it sounds exactly like an Eric Clapton record.
Yep.
It is this pristine, standard blues rock solo. Yeah. And it doesn't sound like a weird psychedelic Beatles record.
To appreciate why it felt out of place initially, you have to look at the brilliant structure of Clapton's solo. He stretches this melodic arch across 16 full measures.
It's a long build.
Very long. He uses aggressive vibrato, bending the notes to create that wailing sound, and the entire solo ultimately peaks on a soaring high A.
And musically, that high A is the only truly resolved melodic note in the entire song, right?
Exactly. It offers this brief moment of catharsis before plunging right back into those descending minor chords.
And the physical instrument he used to hit that high A has its own wild mythology.
Oh, it really does.
Since we were doing a deep dive, I have to mention this crazy tangent. Clapton played Harris's Cherry Red 1957 Gibson Les Paul, which Harrison affectionately nicknamed Lucy.
Lucy.
Yes, and Lucy was actually kidnapped in 1973.
It's such a wild story.
Thieves broke into Harrison's home in Beverly Hills. They stole the guitar, and it ended up being sold to a musician in Mexico.
Just gone.
Gone. Harrison spent months tracking it down. He ultimately had to trade a Fender bass guitar and a rare sunburst Les Paul just to ransom Lucy back.
That is just insane. It is a legendary piece of rock hardware. But back in the studio in 1968, they have this pristine recording of Lucy, and they need to make it sound Beatly.
Right. They need to mess it up a bit.
Yeah. So on October 14th, during the final mixdown, they subjected the lead guitar track to a process called artificial double tracking, or ADT.
Which was basically manual labor at that point.
Totally. Assistant producer Chris Thomas was tasked with manually wobbling the studio's variable speed oscillator.
It is kind of like putting a carefully chosen, moody Instagram filter on a high-definition photograph just to make it fit the aesthetic of your grid.
That's a great way to think about it.
But instead of just tapping a screen, Thomas had to physically wrestle with the machinery. He essentially played with the tape machine's speed motor. He was constantly speeding the tape up and slowing it down by microscopic fractions of a second.
Which caused the guitar track to fall slightly out of sync with itself.
Right, physically warping the sound waves.
And that physical warping creates a wobbly underwater effect known as flanging. It gave the guitar this incredible seasick chorusing effect.
It literally made the guitar sound like it was weeping.
Yes. And the manual labor of twisting that oscillator dial for hours was so intense it actually tired Chris Thomas's wrist out.
Wow.
But it worked perfectly. It completely disguised Clapton's signature clean tone. It embedded the solo deep into the album's dark texture, ensuring it sounded like a natural extension of the band rather than, a guest feature.
Well, while we know exactly how the lead guitar was processed, the rhythm section actually remains a point of intense historical debate. Specifically, the bass track.
Yes, the great bass debate.
Which is wild to me. If EMI kept incredibly meticulous session logs, why is there still a furious debate among historians over who actually played the bass line on the final master?
It really just comes down to the unreliability of human memory and the sheer chaos of the White Album sessions.
There's too much going on.
Way too much. The official logs credit McCartney on the Fender jazz bass, and you can hear that characteristic McCartney tone in there.
Right.
He was likely using flat wound strings and foam mutes under the bridge. In terms of physics, foam mutes physically stop the strings from vibrating freely.
So it dulls the sharp overtones.
Exactly, creating a short, clicky thud. But the low end on this specific track is so unusually thick and warbling that a lot of historians argue John Lennon actually doubled the part.
Right. The theory is Lennon played along on a Fender bass the 6, which is this unique 6-string bass guitar.
Yeah.
And that added this massive, muddy low end to McCartney's really precise playing.
Exactly. But when you ask the engineers who were actually in the room to clarify, they all suffer from collective amnesia.
Nobody remembers.
Nobody. They routinely say the sessions were so fractured and overlapping that they just cannot remember who was holding what instrument on that specific day.
It is wild that such a masterpiece emerged from that fog. But eventually, the song does come together. And on November 22nd, the White Album is released, and it rockets to #1.
Yep.
But because of strict contractual issues with his own record label, Eric Clapton is entirely uncredited on the album sleeve.
Which is a shame, but despite the lack of formal credit, the impact of the song was immediate for Harrison.
It changed everything for him.
It really did. This track permanently broke Harrison out of that junior partner role. It proved unequivocally that he was a songwriting equal to Lennon and McCartney.
It really paved the way for his iconic contributions the following year. Like Something, and Here Comes the Sun.
Absolutely.
But the legacy of the song continues to evolve well beyond the Beatles. I mean, it has become a foundational text for guitarists everywhere. And that brings us to March 15th, 2004.
Oh, this is legendary.
One of the most incredible live performances in rock history. George Harrison is being posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist.
And the organizers assemble an absolute supergroup for the tribute performance. You have Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, Steve Winwood, and George's son, Donnie Harrison.
Just a powerhouse lineup.
And sharing the stage with them is Prince, who was also being inducted into the Hall of Fame that exact same night.
And Prince walked onto that stage with a massive chip on his shoulder. He had recently been completely left off a really prominent Rolling Stone magazine list of the greatest guitarists of all time.
Which is absurd.
Totally absurd. So the Tricky Band is playing the song. It is beautiful. It's respectful, very faithful to the original recording. Then at exactly 3 minutes and 24 seconds into the performance, Prince steps forward out of the shadows.
And what follows is just a 3-minute masterclass in virtuosity.
It's mind-blowing.
But it is not just empty shredding, you know. He completely redefines the musical mythos of the song.
How so?
Well, where Clapton's original solo relied on restraint and traditional pentatonic blues scales to sort of simulate gentle weeping, Prince contrasts that by unleashing these blistering funk metal scales.
Right.
He uses aggressive pinched harmonics that make the guitar squeal. He's playing with a sheer speed and fury that completely shatters that melancholy atmosphere.
It is the ultimate, undeniable mic drop of revenge, but executed entirely through a lead guitar.
Perfectly said.
He's musically screaming, "You forgot about me!" And the visual theatrics completely match the musical intent.
Oh yeah, he put on a show.
At one point, he does this really rhythmic shotgun reload motion up the neck of the guitar. Later, while he's shredding flawlessly, he literally leans all the way back off the stage into the front row for a trust fall, while a security guard holds him up.
It is a performance that physically demands you pay attention to him, much in the same way Harrison demanded his bandmates pay attention back in 1968, actually.
That's a great parallel.
He forces his way to the center of the narrative. And the finale of Prince's performance is just pure myth, maybe.
Oh, it's the best part. He plays the final screaming note. He takes off his custom Fender Telecaster and just throws it straight up into the air.
Just launches it.
On the video broadcast, the guitar seemingly vanishes into the rafters. It never hits the ground, and Prince just struts off the stage like it is nothing.
Like a magic trick.
Exactly. For years, people wondered where it went. Well, it turns out he had his guitar tech standing in the darkness of the front row. The tech caught the falling guitar perfectly, and per Prince's explicit instructions, immediately handed it to Oprah Winfrey, who just happened to be sitting right there.
That is just incredible.
Oprah eventually gave it back, and it now lives at Prince's estate, Paisley Park.
You know, if we step back and look at this entire journey, it perfectly encapsulates the strange, interconnected magic of the song's origin.
We started with George Harrison in a quiet house in Cheshire, pulling a random book off a shelf, completely driven by ancient Chinese philosophy.
Right.
That single chance moment sparked a song that survived a fractured, deeply toxic studio in London. It required a secret intervention by Eric Clapton, pioneered physical tape-warping recording techniques that literally exhausted the engineers, and finally ended decades later with an airborne guitar caught by Oprah Winfrey.
It completely validates Harrison's initial theory, doesn't it?
The relative causality.
Yeah, the Eastern concept of relative causality. Nothing is a coincidence. Every single one of those chaotic, desperate, or beautiful moments had an inherent purpose, building toward a piece of music that continues to resonate with anyone who feels the tragedy of a sleeping, disconnected world.
Wow. So consider how Harrison used the concept of relative causality to pull those two words from a book and literally change music history. If you walked over to your own bookshelf right now, closed your eyes, and pointed to a completely random sentence, what underlying truth about your own life is that sentence trying to tell you? If you like this episode, please support the show by liking and subscribing.